Under the same sun, we laugh, we run. Our world, our home, we share the air. Let's care for it, show we care. Under the same sun, let's show we care. Let's show we care.
Under the same sun. Hello and welcome to Under the Same Sun, and I am your host, Lois Sambo. This is where we talk about the environment, not as something far away, but as something we live in, breathe in, and depend on every single day. We all have noticed how different the heat feels these days. It's not just hot, it's more intense, and it lingers a little longer than it used to. What about the rains? We don't even understand the patterns anymore. And so we easily just brush it off as it's just the weather. And a lot of us think of this climate change thing as another big issue we don't understand. But the truth is, climate change is an issue to us because we as humans are the primary cause of it. Well, today on the program, we will be discussing about the issues and the causes of climate change. Because the truth is, some of the biggest changes happening to our planet, especially climate change, is not always visible, but is powerful enough to shape our climate, our health, our food, and even our future. So the conversation today is on greenhouse gases, global warming, and the real evidence of climate change. So you're able to understand it beyond the term climate change. And our guest today is Enebi Opaluwa. He's the team lead, natural resource and climate governance at BudgIt. Enebi, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Lois, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. But before we move on, here's the sundial. This is the sundial. Did you know? Nigeria is one of Africa's largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, releasing over 300 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent every year. A significant portion of these emissions comes from everyday activities like electricity generation, transportation, and small-scale diesel and petrol generators used in homes and businesses. Now here's something that might surprise you. Gas flaring remains one of Nigeria's biggest environmental challenges. In the Niger Delta, excess natural gas released during oil extraction is often burned into the atmosphere. This practice not only releases large amounts of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane, but also exposes nearby communities to heat, air pollution, and serious health risks. And finally, deforestation is quietly driving emissions higher across the country. When trees are cut down for farming, charcoal, or urban development, the carbon stored in them is released into the atmosphere. At the same time, fewer trees means less natural absorption of carbon dioxide. So Nigeria is facing a double impact, more carbon being released and less being absorbed, which accelerates climate change. Welcome back, and Enebi is still here with us. Now, straight off to the conversation. When we begin to talk about climate change, we hear a lot about greenhouse gases. Some call it greenhouse emissions, all the big English that people really don't understand. But for someone that is hearing this term for the first time, how would you explain what greenhouse gases are?
Okay, so greenhouse gases were named not because of the color, but because of the effect it creates over the earth. So you've heard of greenhouse in farming, farming. Mm-hmm. Yes, where people have like a small garden, yes, where they plant, they have plants inside, they grow plants, grow flowers, yes, and then is a structure that is covered, right, by a transparent material. Mm-hmm. So it's not open to the entire environment. It's just covered, so you can have controlled air, controlled humidity. So that's what is called a greenhouse. Mm-hmm. That cover over the plants that are being grown. So it is that effect that those gases have on the planet that made them to be named greenhouse gases, in the sense that these are gases that when they go up into the atmosphere, they create a form of blankets, let's say an invisible blanket, a layer around the earth that prevents heat from escaping from the planet. So when the sun hits the planet, usually part of the light and heat is reflected away. But because of the blanket, the greenhouse effect of these gases, not all of these heat that are supposed to leave back into space, they can't leave it. So they are now reflected back to the earth. So because of that, the planet now keeps or retains more heat than it should have naturally done before. Normally, that wouldn't have been a problem, but because of human activities, the volume of these gases in the atmosphere have been on the increase. And so this effect has gone beyond normal, beyond the usual level. And that is why it's now causing more heat to be trapped in the atmosphere and now causing overall temperature rise in global temperature. That is what the whole greenhouse gases means.
So what are the greenhouse gases like? Yeah, what are the different gases that make up the
There are a
greenhouse
couple
gases?
of greenhouse gases, but the major culprits are carbon dioxide, CO2, methane gas, CH4, and nitrous oxide, NO2. Those are the major gases. There are other gases like freon, but those ones are kind of, I think they're no longer, they're still there, but I think advancement in technology has phased out some of these things. Freon gas was what we used in refrigeration, but I think several years ago, at least two or three decades ago, because of the greenhouse effect, ozone effect, and health effects, it was phased out of being used as a coolant for refrigeration, and so we no longer use freon. But the major culprits: CO2, CH4, which is methane, and then nitrous oxide. CO2 is a byproduct of combustion when you burn fossil fuels, or when you burn wood, when you basically most combustions, natural combustions, you have, when I say combustion, burning, CO2 is a byproduct. CO2 is a product that comes out of it. Also, when human beings breathe and we exhale, we release CO2, but our own breathing is not what is pushing the threshold above. Yes, the natural balance of the planet can control for the human exhale, what we breathe out. But because of increased use of fossil fuels, we release more CO2. CH4, methane, is a product that is a major component of natural gas. And natural gas comes from inside the earth crust when we explore and use crude oil, or we are exploring for natural gas as used for fuel for power generation or industries. So that's CH4. Nitrous oxide is also a byproduct of industrial processes and also comes out through some form of combustion of certain chemicals as well. These are major culprits, but I think above all, CO2 comes first, methane comes second. However, if we are looking at the short term, methane has the power to trap more heat in the atmosphere over a 20-year cycle. It's 80 times stronger than CO2 in trapping heat over a shorter period of time. But if you're looking at the long term, CO2 has more retaining power for heat. So methane might be able to dissipate from the atmosphere a lot faster than CO2. That's why methane is much more dangerous in the short term if the levels go too high. While CO2 is very stubborn. It's like stubborn grass. Stubborn grass, when you clear it, before 3 days again, it has come up again. You clear it. In fact, sometimes you put some kind of chemical, it will still pop up, you said again. So CO2 is like stubborn. Over a long period of time, it still has the ability to keep heat in the atmosphere.
Okay. So when these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane, are released, right? What actually happens? Because the truth is, the reason why we have climate change is because of our activities, human activities. But the reason why I think we don't take it serious is because we don't see what's happening. We don't understand what's happening. Literally, it looks like if you burn something, the smoke goes up and it disappears. It's like your troubles have gone away, right? But what actually happens, when these gases are released in the atmosphere?
Okay, so like I said, when they are released, they go and form this blanket layer. So naturally, heat that would have left the earth is now trapped and stays within the earth. And so over time, when this stays in the atmosphere for a long period and we keep pumping in more CO2, more CH4, the overall temperature of the earth begins to increase. Usually, if you 0.1 degrees here, 0.02 degrees here, little by little. And then over the last, I think, 30 to 40 years, the increase has been much more significant. So, for example, how will I explain this? If you were a ham, let's say you put water in your refrigerator, for example, and there is full current, your refrigerator will be cooling what they call oil pumping.
Yeah.
Your bottles will be freezing
Yes.
very well. But let's say the current or voltage drops below standard. The first 5 minutes, you will notice that the bottle of water inside they won't notice the change.
Yeah.
But leave it there for like 6 hours. Then you realize that this water has lost its in quote coolness. It's no longer as cold as it was, because for a sustained period, the refrigerator is no longer able to maintain that cold, keeping the water cool. I don't know if my example is very bad.
Yes.
So something similar, because the earth in its natural composition has its temperature, but because for an extended period of time, these greenhouse gases have been going and causing this greenhouse effect on it. Over time, it increases. Now, the overall temperature, you usually know that the reference point is to pre-industrial levels. That tells you that this pollution and this greenhouse gas effects began during industrialization. When man started to develop and started to industrialize and started to burn fossil fuels, burn coal, burn more firewood, burn more diesel, burn more petrol. And so these gases came as a result of those industrialized activities. Now, over time, the overall global temperature has started to increase. Usually the benchmark is, they say, 2 degrees above industrial level. Sometimes you say, what is 2 degrees? This morning it was 25 degrees centigrade. Today is 35 in Nigeria. We are still alive. All that kind of thing.
And 2 degrees feels so small.
It looks so small. But what now happens is that it's enough to shift the balance. All right. To shift the balance of some natural ecosystems. Now, you wonder why the ice cap in the South Pole and the North Pole are able to maintain their ice nature irrespective of whether it's summer or winter. Because the overall temperature of the earth, coupled with the magnetic field of the poles, has been able to create the environmental balance. And because temperature is now going out of position, is now shifting, the overall temperature is now making that ambience warm up a little bit. So if you are in a room that has an air condition and then the AC is working very well, and then you are feeling cool, and then power goes out, and after like 5 minutes you start feeling some breakout of sweat, the room may still be cold, but it's no longer as cold as before. So that overall balance in temperature around those areas now begins to warm up. And what now happens is that the ice now starts melting, and the ice has been melting for years now. Now, ice doesn't melt and disappear. It melts and turns into water. So you imagine all that ice in Antarctica. It's an elevated plain.
Yes.
That is solid water. Now, as the more the ice melts, the more water goes into the global hydrological system, the global water sea system. So it's just like you have water in a cup that is 3/4 full, and then you just start adding small, just one drop of water. Just because every 5 minutes, one drop goes poop. You won't notice the difference. But come the next day, you realize that your cup that was 75% full is now maybe 80% full. And then imagine that for 10 years. If you can get to a point, the cup is almost full. That is something similar. As more ice melts from the ice cap, more water goes into the global hydro system, water system, river system, sea systems. And then you have increased sea levels. That is one. Now, the way weather works between summer, rainfall, winter, certain temperature has a lot to do. If you notice, during hot weather, you have more wind. When the weather is hot, there's more breeze. That's because the air molecules are now warm. And when something is warm, it has gathered energy, and so it has more kinetic energy and can move. Let's say kinetic energy can move faster, move from one place. So the speed of movement of those air molecules are faster. So that is one way to see why wind moves faster when it is warm compared to when the weather in the same day. And now there are other things that are good. This is just a simplified extension. There are other things in geography that affects that, like harmattan season, rainy season.
Yes.
But on a normal day, when the weather is cool and calm, it's the wind is mild. As it begins to warm up, you see that the air molecules start moving faster. So that's one of the things that contributes to increased wind. Now, in a way, that affects weather because we now have warmer temperatures. By the time, if you did geography, you have when warm air mixed with cool air, you have rainfall, and then you have more imbalance. There's a lot of science and geography that goes into it.
Yeah.
But on the overall is that you now have more rainfall. You have more rainfall. You have stronger rainfalls. I mean, the intensity of storms are increased. Stronger storms happen more frequently. Another way that this manifests that areas that don't experience so much rainfall, like for example, northern Nigeria, you have more heat waves. The overall temperature is hotter for longer periods of time. Because of longer heat waves, you have longer drought periods. And then because of less water, vegetation around deserts have less water, they don't survive. And so the desert begins to move further and further. Because of that, so you see that we are losing arable land in the north. As we lose more arable land, we lose vegetation, and begins to trickle into food security. You can't farm, you can't feed your cattle. Cattle have to now start strolling further to go and graze, and let me just stop them not going to the other the extra problem. But that affects livestock, for nomadic livestock farming. And then same thing to overall temperature. You now see where the overall average temperature of water bodies, rivers, seas, lakes begins to increase. And when that happens, some aquatic life cannot survive at certain temperatures. So they either migrate to where they can find better temperatures, or they die out. That's one. When that happens, even the health of these aquatic farmers begin to deteriorate. So you have fewer fishes. If fishes are not producing and not reproducing as much as they we have fewer fishes, fewer catches. So we are able to notice this because around coastal regions in Nigeria, we are looking at the coastal like Akwa Ibom, Rivers, Delta State, Abayosa. These are people that a lot of communities are fishing communities, and they depend on fishing and aquatic livelihoods to survive. Now, the reports we've gotten there is that there are some species of fish that no longer are available, and now the volume of fishing has reduced. Then sometimes you now have to go a lot further into the sea for you to get a good catch. So that means your cost of getting fish has increased. So that's an economic problem. Because you spend more fuel to power your boats to go further into sea. You are exposed to more harsh seas, more sea storms. So your risk has increased. Some fishermen actually die out at sea when trying to catch fishing before you want to compete with the international fishermen. But that is another challenge. Now, if you notice that these same coastals are also the ones where are host communities to oil production in Nigeria. And so you have a lot of oil and gas production, a lot of gas flaring. Gas flare sites have been known to have what they call a local climate, because the heat from the flare sites affects light at night, affects sleeping habit of people living around there, and also increase the overall environmental temperature, increasing it a lot higher. So these are immediate effects from gas flare sites, gas flare locations, and also overall warming from overall rise in temperature from global warming. So these are some of the ways these things begin to manifest in the way that we see it. And the resultant effect of all of this is that you now have more rains, more flood, more heat waves means more heat stroke. People fall under heat stroke. People lives and property are damaged due to floods. I don't think flood is a strange phenomenon in Nigeria.
No, of course
now.
it's not.
So in 2020, in 2012, we had a very nasty flood. In 2022, another repetition again. We lost, I think, over $6 billion in terms of property that was estimated to be damaged there. So these are some of the ways these things begin to manifest in everyday life. Agricultural yield drops, flood destroys farmlands, so it also affects food security. In the 2022 floods, major farms in the Middle Belt from Nasarawa to some parts of northern Nigeria were damaged. They were submerged in floods. There was a huge economic loss.
Yeah.
And we saw damage of, in fact, that 2022 floods blocked roads connecting southern Nigeria.
We couldn't get fuel. That was what
that was what triggered the first scarcity.
Yeah, triggered anyways.
While the first scarcity lasted for 6 months, even after the water had dried up, we cannot. But
so the Nigerian phenomenon is also there.
But that triggered it. That triggered the first scarcity because tankers that moved fuel from the depots in the south could no longer access the north for at least a week, disrupting fuel supply more than that. So and so these are the way all of these things are interconnected. Laws of economic loss, agricultural loss of human lives, which is very bad. Last year there was a mine that collapsed. Was it in Niger State? I can't remember the state, but there was a mine that collapsed and several people died. And apparently the mine collapsed because of flooding as a result of increased rainfall. That connection was made. We've had several incidences around in states in the north where flood comes and just overwhelms some communities. It was said that the flood in 2012 was because the dam can overflow. But the reason the dam overflows because the increased rainfall and the dam has started to accumulate more water than it could hold. So they have to release that dam. So there's still a link to
climate change.
And because of all of this increased flooding, increased heat waves, existing infrastructure can no longer accommodate the usual existing infrastructure that accommodate the usual level can no longer accommodate the new level. So because we have more rainfall, our drainage systems are no longer able to evacuate flood waters faster.
Yes.
And so we have more floods in urban areas. Because of heat waves and heat stroke, we have some hospitals become overwhelmed with people falling down to sickness from heat stroke. And in fact, people die. I think in 2024 was recorded as the hottest year on record in over 170 years of measurements that took place when it comes to heat stroke. And it was recorded that around the West African sub-region, temperatures rose significantly. In Sudan, heat wave was between 41 degrees and 55 degrees in March. Yes.
Almost at this time last year.
Yeah, exactly around this time last year. And that same heat wave affected Burkina Faso, Chad, Guinea, Niger, Nigeria, and Senegal. In Senegal, 102 people died in 4 days. Due to the Sahel heat wave. Yes. I don't know how the numbers for Nigeria, but there were also loss of lives in Nigeria due to heat waves. So we see the flaws, but sometimes the issues around heat waves are also things that affect affect people. And people in rural communities are hit the most, because if you're in urban areas and you are well-to-do, you may be able to buy fuel in your gen and put on your AC. But if you don't have that means, even today, the power supply in Nigeria is it's
been terrible.
It's poor.
So you put on your gen, you're burning, and you're causing greenhouse gases.
You're causing more greenhouse gases because you're burning fuel for your generator. Let's not even look at how much we are buying fuel now because of the Iran and US-Israel war. But you have people that, because you stay in the heat and you look at your children, you're in the heat and it's getting unbearable. You either spend the money to save your life, or you run the risk of having heat stroke or having other illness like heat rashes, and just for kids who are vulnerable to these things as well. So it's like a cycle and a web of issues that it needs to be addressed.
It really needs to, because 2 weeks ago I went out for a documentary shoot somewhere, and I stepped out to do something under the sun. And within 5 minutes, it was so hot. My shoes were burning my leg. That was how bad it was. And I was like, this is so terrible. It's so bad. It's beyond how, before people were thinking that climate change was just the next cash cow. But I think reality is actually dawning on us.
Yes, anyone that ignores it is just being willfully ignorant. I wanted to, when I was going to bed last night, I laid down my bed and it was warm. It was warm. Today, at least today, the last few days, my clothes are warmer than my skin. I didn't press them. This is not. It's not as if you want to get dressed in the morning and you put on your clothes.
And
you can feel it's warm. Meaning that the temperature of your cloth is warmer than your own body temperature. It's already in an uncomfortable position for you. As for the image, your environment is already uncomfortable because your clothes are storing the heat, and the environmental temperature is not conducive enough for them to release that heat faster. You touch your building walls; they are warm at night. And because that is the time they now have to release the heat that they gather during the day. And then when they are releasing the heat, it's you that is the room that will suffer.
Lord have mercy.
If you are now in a place like Lagos where you are living, you face me, I face you, and then you open your window so that the heat will go, your neighbor will on, I better pass my generator. You can't sleep at night. You can't close your window because of the heat. There's no light to put on the fan.
It's an endless cycle. It is an endless cycle.
It's a very uncomfortable situation. And the problem is that the forecast is not really also now. If things don't change, we run the risk of having 3 to 20 times of droughts between now and I think 2050. Between now and 2080, I think 20 more people will die from heat stroke on a normal basis.
We are almost out of time for today, so we'll pause here and continue with the second part next week. Before we wrap up the program, here are 3 green steps you can take this week. Use cleaner cooking options when possible. If you can, switch to gas, electric stoves, or improve cook stoves that produce less smoke. Avoid burning waste. Burning trash releases harmful gases into the air. Find safer ways to dispose of waste where possible. Plant and protect trees around your home. Trees help clean the air and provide shade, which can reduce heat around your environment. We may not see the air, but every small step we take can make it cleaner, safer, and healthier for all of us under the same sun. Well, that is that for the episode today. Please join us again because there's still a lot more and it only gets more interesting from here.
Under the same sun.